looks great. It looks absolutely great.
Okay, here we go.
I'm glad to.
Welcome to Movies and More with Stacy Hovis and John Brandon. Every week, Stacy and John come to you with the latest movies in the marketplace. Media experts Stacy and
I'm sorry, hold
John
on.
take you to the movies and tell you what.
I don't know what he did there.
I don't have your dates and times for your show. Oh, here it is.
What did he do?
Movies and what got it. Okay. It's going to be at, okay, Fridays at 3,
Okay.
Right.
and then Monday to Friday at 5
Yeah.
on the national network. Okay, I got it.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's roll.
Here we go.
Welcome to Movies and More with Stacy Hovis and John Brandon. Every week, Stacy and John come to you with the latest movies in the marketplace. Media experts Stacy and John take you to the movies and tell you what's hot and what's not in the media world. Stacy and John host conversations about the topics in the films. Their mission is to guide you through the media world. Okay, audience, here.
All right, audience. Welcome to the Movies and More show. I'm Dr. Stan Fine, the guest host, because I'm interviewing the host of the show, Stacy Hovis and John Brandon. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about this inaugural show before we get started. They're coming to you every week with the latest movies in the marketplace. And John wrote something he thought would be put some nice words to it, which I really like. And he said, "Welcome everyone to a different sort of show that you typically hear on our station. And today, your two local filmmaker guys, they're our co-hosts, Stacy.
We are.
You are. You're right. I like your voice.
Yes, sir.
Stacy Hovis and John Brandon. These are two guys working very diligently to bring a mini Hollywood type filmmaking industry to the St. Louis area. Does that sound at all doable? These guys believe it is. So I thought what I'd do is have you each, since you are co-hosts, have you introduce yourself. That's a nice way to do it,
That's the perfect way to do it.
Yeah, and it takes the weight off me and it puts the weight on them.
Sure.
So let's start with Stacy. Why don't you tell them about you and just let them get to know you as a host.
Thank you very much. And first off, I want to thank everyone out there for tuning in today for our inaugural introduction to Movies and More, as was stated very well by Dr. Stan. Our purpose and intent is going to be to bring everyone up to date on new film releases, cinematic releases, but we're also going to talk to independent film producers, the people related to the business, and all that sort of thing. Now, as to my background, I'm a homie from St. Louis, Missouri. Was educated initially in the public school system, having gone to Northwest High School, class of '68. Oh, I just gave away my age. Damn, I should have done that. Okay, well, anyway, so I'm a more mature guy. That's what I tell my kids. That's what I tell any women I want to date. I'm more mature.
Guy that's been around the block.
Guy that's been around the block. My kids say that 70 plus isn't old if you're a tree. Now I don't know what that means, but that's what they tell me. Okay, nonetheless. But anyway, went in the Navy in '69 through '72 during the Vietnam era. Came out, went to Missouri, University of Missouri. Eventually got a law degree and went into business. I didn't actually have a practice per se, but I did trust law, estate law, boring stuff like that. That's
Snoring already.
Every time I tell John that, it's like no dose. He automatically goes into sleep mode.
I'm trying to liven up his life a little bit.
It was, but at any rate, I had my single claim to fame. I got to tell you this: in the film business, more specifically the television business, was I had a cousin that was a co-star on Hogan's
I
Heroes.
was hoping you'd bring that up.
Well, I did, and I'm sure.
Because I used to watch that show like every day when I was a
Well,
kid. I'm sure Stan did.
Yeah, Well, I mean, there's.
Yeah, I watched it. I had no idea but
Well,
That's cool.
Larry Hovis, who played Carter, and he was
The skinny,
the
geeky
skinny guy
guy
with the big schnoz. That was
that ran the
Carter.
radio stuff.
God rest his soul. So he was on the show there from its inception, 1965, I guess it was, through 1971. And Larry, after he left the show, I'm giving you a brief commercial about him because it kind of leads into what I became basically. He went into game show production. And after I got out of college, about 75, I looked Cuz up in 76. He was working with a guy by the name of Pat McCormick.
Who we all know
Who we all
from the
know.
Tonight Show.
Well, for some of you that might not be familiar with that name, I know we've all seen Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah.
Remember that with Burt Reynolds?
And he was Big Daddy.
Well, actually, he was Big Ennis, and Paul Williams was Little Ennis. Now, how do we get that distinction? Pat was a 6'7". I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Williams was 5'4" with heels. So,
Yes.
So it was kind of like a Mutt and Jeff thing, all right? But anyway, he introduced me to Pat, who at that time was a senior writer for The Tonight Show. And I was able to...
Joke writer, comedy
yes,
writer. Yes.
Well, he wrote the routines, the stand-up material for Johnny Carson.
Right.
And so I got next to him, and he allowed me to kind of ghostwrite for him. And there was a real good reason why that, because he liked to go to the track a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing he liked to do besides go to the track, he liked to drink a lot. So between drinking and the track, he was glad that I would ghostwrite because I did his job, which gave him more free time, more
Right.
me time.
Right.
So that's how I got started. So time goes by, had a development deal with Fox Broadcasting, and of late with my life partner Connie Bolte, who I'd better mention her name, or it'll be a cold night in
Yeah.
tonight
In St. Louis.
In St. Louis. Even if that cold. In fact, today it's a beautiful day, 60-something degrees for our listeners.
Almost 70. I
Almost
was sweating
70. It
outside.
is. Well, I wore a coat like a schmuck, but anyway.
I got a winter coat in back
Well,
there, but I didn't know what to do.
You look like a deer hunter, Stan. I gotta tell you with that orange, but that's okay. I know you wouldn't kill Bambi. We don't want to go there with that. But the thing is that she and I are currently writing screenplays, and which I gotta say that my co-host John Brandon is also a screenwriter and a movie producer as well. So I'm gonna lateral over.
Throw it over here?
Well, wait a minute, I want to introduce them. You can't throw it over there.
Yeah.
Well, did we say enough about you, Stacy?
That's all I want to say about me.
Okay. You think you said enough? Okay.
He left a couple things out that I'll remind him of during the show.
Yeah, I mean,
He's got a lot of stuff going on in his
that's
life.
what I thought. He's the go-to guy.
Well, I gotta save something for later.
We got to understand. I've known Stacy for about a year. I'm stealing the thunder on your introduction of me.
Doesn't bother me at all.
Stacy and I were introduced by a pretty trusted friend, very successful gentleman, who's not in the movie business at all, who we both have kind of gone to separately over the years, seeking help and financing on projects. And finally, our mutual friend introduced us together right about a year ago. Yeah. And we've been good friends ever since, and we talk all the time. And we both want to do the same things in life.
That's really cool. So with that being said, would you like to tell us about you for the audience?
Sure. My name's John Brandon, as you said. I consider myself one of the few handful of St. Louis filmmakers. I grew up in South County. I went to the Lindbergh School District. I went to DeSmet. And I was one of the last hippies to go to DeSmet. And then I got into graduate school and thought I wanted to be a businessman, and decided that I wanted to be a journalist instead. So I got a job working for the St. Louis Suburban Journals, and I don't think that they exist anymore.
Yeah, a lot of them come and gone. Yeah.
While I was a senior at Webster University, writing for the newspaper there, I got my first professional job writing 2 stories a week for the Suburban Journals, and they were covering the city, the girls' high school basketball league in the inner city. and it taught me how to, you know, a little bit about how to ask questions and things. And after I did that for a couple of years, when I got out of college, I decided I liked being a reporter, but newspaper was not exciting enough for me. So I got some internships at the television stations in St. Louis, Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 5. Back then, talking the early 90s, Channel 5 was the monster station. They had Dick Ford, they had Karen Foss, Mike Bush was the sports director, Bob Richards was the weatherman, God rest his soul.
Wasn't Jay Randolph before Mike Bush?
He was, and Jay Randolph still had a desk in the Channel 5 sports department in 1991, and I actually saw him that summer. I interned. He came in twice, and he was the nicest, most respectful guy you could ever meet. Nothing but class. Jay Randolph is a classy person.
That's cool.
And, you know, I saw how professional and driven Mike Bush was, because Mike Bush was number one, and to me, had the most credibility of anybody in that era as a St. Louis sportscaster, television sportscaster. Zip was close, you know. I worked for Zip too. They were two completely different people. But Mike Bush taught me a lot about just have this attitude that you're going to win. Don't overlook anything when it comes to your sportscast.
Right.
Don't be lazy. Get things done the right way, or you'll make a fool out of yourself. And I had one day where I missed a big highlight. It was on the sports feed. It was actually Terry Pendleton got called out at first when he was playing for the Atlanta Braves, and he went a little crazy, you know, on the umpire. And I didn't put a big enough star that Mike Bush didn't want to overlook that. And Mike Bush called me out on it, you know. And I'll never forget the fear of God that went from the top of my head to the bottoms of my feet when Mike Bush said, "John, I want you to come over here. I want to talk to you for a minute privately." I mean, he was, you know, he was as big as anybody in St.
So
Louis.
it was a classic reprimand.
It was a reprimand.
Yeah, okay.
But it taught me to always be prepared, and I'd never let him down again. After that, I got into television news, and I was an anchor, and he gave me some of the best advice I've ever had from anybody. When I got my first job, I came to him and I said, "Mike, I'm a little nervous, you know, I'm going to be on live TV." And he said, "You know, I remember my first job, just be friendly. And if you're friendly, everything else will fall into place, you know." So anyway, during my years in television as an anchor, I worked around the Midwest,
Mhm.
and I had an interest, a long-term interest, to get into filmmaking. So when I was a TV news anchor, I also went out and did a story every day, shot my own stories, and edited my own stories, wrote my own stories, and it was a great way to lay the groundwork to be a filmmaker.
Well, I think it's, I've been in radio 11 years. I've been in corporate America a long time. And I think what I look for is things, no matter how old you are or what you've done. But I look at things that you can make a difference out there or give the world information.
Absolutely.
And there's so many people have not giving information anymore, fake news, call it what you want. And so what I like to do is, like this new show, it makes sense. It does make sense. And my mind on this show is that it's a show about movies and what's going on out there and what you should see and why it's happening to give you more than the ad for AMC or Marcus.
Right.
Give you a little deeper understanding. You guys know actors and you know producers, and so you'll go, "Hey, tell us about this movie." And a lot of people have a story to tell. My opinion, having taught seminars nationwide, done all kinds of things, is everybody's got a story. You know, you got a story. If it's a story about a movie, you got it. And that leads me to my first question,
Sure.
which is, how easy or difficult is it to get into the film business at a high level?
I'd say I don't think anybody can just jump right in at a high level. It's almost impossible.
To John's point, what I can tell you is this: even kids that are, we'll say, next generation kids. What comes to my mind, even though it was a television performer, Michael Landon's son. He had a son and a daughter.
Mhm.
that tried to break in the business. I think they were talented, but for some reason they just went at it, and it was tough. If you talk to people that were connected with the Actors Studio, that came up through the whole business of the Strasberg method of acting, um, those were some of the early, what I'm calling post World War II era performers, like Marlon Brando, and even Susan Strasberg. I mean,
Mhm.
these people came out of that era. There was a method acting or whatever. So what John's talking about, how easy is it to break in from someone that has no lineage, no connection to the industry?
Right.
It's pretty difficult. It really is. Uh, most people start out at some form, maybe in high school plays or college plays or whatever, and they start auditioning or whatever. I know a lot of actors that really start out as extras,
Sure.
and extras are like the lowest form
That's
of the
like-
totem pole.
That's how John Wayne got in.
Well, that's the first I see right now. The Duke, right? Okay. And, I think a big part of breaking into the business, talent will eventually show itself. Our lack of talent will show itself. In the event of someone being talented, I think that will carry you a long way towards breaking into the business. And, and you hear all these weird stories like, how you're discovered or how somebody sees you. I can tell you that, referring to my cousin Larry real quick.
Mhm.
Larry was in a traveling band, and he was a drummer. And Bill just banging away some drums, and he'd do like mug shots, and he was always cracking wise. He's at a Holiday Inn in Oxnard. I don't know if you ever heard of Oxnard.
California.
California.
Yeah.
To be
Yeah.
clear,
Yeah.
Oxnard, at a Holiday Inn, and he's banging his drums, and he was always one of those guys that would play music at night.
Mhm.
The other guys would sleep late. He'd go out on auditions trying to break into the business. That's what we're talking about, right?
Sure.
Okay. And so the guys all knew that he was an aspiring actor. That's what he wanted to do. Well, this one particular night, towards the end of the last set, a guy comes up to him, and he's got a card, and he says, "Hi, I'm with Bing Crosby Studios." He said, "I'm a producer," and he said, "We'd like to cast you in a sitcom."
Mm-hmm.
So Larry looked at him like, "Yeah, right, okay." The guys put you up to that, didn't
Yeah.
they? Come on, be honest. What
Thought it
happened?
was a joke.
But he didn't say that to him. He was just like, "Okay, yeah, I'm gonna play along." So he just thinks, "Yeah, this guy's kind of full of beans." And then we look, "Oh," he said, "Here, let me give you my card," and he gave him his card. I go, "Man, they went through an awful lot of trouble to pull the show."
Sure.
So after the show, we went over the guy and said, "Okay, how much did you pay that guy to come over?" He said, "What the hell are you talking about?" He said, "The guy that's trying to, but look, we don't know what you're talking about." Anyway, the next day he auditioned, and he got on Hogan's
Hogan.
Heroes, but first he was on Gomer Pyle at USMC. That was the first bit of television work he did. So that's just kind of an anecdote about how you get into the business. I didn't mean to get off on a wrong tangent there,
Sure.
but that's my story that I know.
The biggest thing that I needed to learn when I got in to trying to make my first short film in a serious way, I was a television news reporter in Lexington, Kentucky. And I was what you call an enterpriser. I dug up my own stories. A one-man band guy that just dug up his own story, took his camera out, told his boss, "Give me 3 hours, I'll be back with the story." Okay. So one day I get in there, and there's a fax on the fax machine from this little playhouse in Danville, Kentucky, which is 2 hours south of Lexington by car. Okay. And the guy's name was Eben Henson. And it said, "Please, send a reporter to the premiere of our summer play season." It was called the Pioneer Playhouse. It's still down there. Eben died in 2004. But I called Eben up and I said, "Can I come down and do a story on your opening night?" He said, "Yeah." And when I actually showed up with the camera, he was like, "Wow, you really came?" I said, "Yeah." I said I was going to be here. I said, don't all the TV stations in Lexington do shows on your playhouse every year?" He said, "You're the first guy that's come down here in like 10 years to do a story on it."
Wow.
And anyway, Evan Henson and I became pretty doggone good friends, and I had an inner motive. Uh, I did a real nice job on the story, okay, of his opening night, and then I called him up and said, "What did you think of the story?" And he said, "Man, it was great." And I said, "Well, could I come down and have lunch with you or something?" Because he knew about actors and finding actors, finding good actors. Okay, and that was where I lacked the knowledge. I didn't have any confidence, and I didn't know how to audition actors or even find actors to invite to an audition. And I discussed. I went down. I took Evan lunch. We sat and talked at his house for a couple of hours on my day off, and he told me that he found his actors in New York City every year. He said, I put an ad in this magazine called Backstage Magazine. This was back in the early 90s. Okay.
Mhm.
No such thing really. The internet existed, but nobody was really using it yet. Okay. And so he told me about the whole process of finding actors. And I said, well, if I put an ad in for a short film in Kentucky, you think I'd get any replies from actors? Well, I did, and I got a box of headshots that I still have in my basement. Back before people sent emails and all that, their
Right.
videos, YouTube didn't exist. I have a giant box, the size of a futon, of headshots
Yeah.
uh, from actors from 1996. Three of those people became really famous that auditioned for me. Two of them I used in my first
You
film.
naming names? Are we okay?
I can give you some names. A guy
You don't
named.
have to. I
No,
just
no,
think
no.
that's-
I'm actually, this is something I'm quite proud of. It didn't occur to me, Stan, until 10 years later, after these people made it big, that I had some pretty good instincts about finding actors. Okay, it's not something you realize overnight. You see
Yeah.
that the people you had the strong feeling for. The first guy, his name was Carmine Giovinazzo. Okay, he ended up on one of those cop shows, CSI New York or something.
Wasn't he in organized crime, that name?
I'm not
Well, it
sure.
sure sounds like.
He was in Black Hawk Down. He's been in a bunch of stuff, but I guarantee you, if you just look him up in IMDb, you know his face. I still have his audition tape that he sent me in 1996. It was a film about a hockey player, and I said, you prerequisite, you have to be able to ice skate. So he sends me an audition tape of him rollerblading around a parking lot in Brooklyn somewhere, and it was just he had so much charm. He was such a good looking guy. He was so charismatic, and 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 I called him up and I said, man, I got to meet you, Well, anyway, he ended up not making that film with me because he got hired by the UPN network to star in a show called Shasta McNasty in 1997, and Shasta McNasty, it was three goofy guys and a little short guy, and the short guy was Vern Troyer
Okay.
from.
I think we're on our way to break. I don't mean to cut you off, but okay, we're going to take a break now. And when we get back, we're going to continue our discussion with your new hosts of Movies and More, Stacy and John, about their new show. So, is that okay, Mark? We're going to head for the break. All right, take a breather and don't leave us. We'll be there when we come back. Good.
You like that song? No.
Yeah, listen to it twice.
There is vocals
Yeah.
on that toward the end,
Yeah, I know.
like the first minute and a half.
Saying that bad that we thought if we play that for you and
Excuse me. Hey, Mark.
You have your own radio show and put you on 100 cities
Mark.
daily across the U.S. And you can immediately start recording from a
Hey,
live
Mark.
radio studio.
Do the girls at 911 know that we're running behind? Are they okay?
No, I didn't book all these people now, Stan. I don't mean to get on you, but
No,
there's always post-production and people getting up and down, and you need about 30 minutes between shows. Yeah, this is what happens.
Who's bringing on the door?
I was me.
You're good?
I haven't been in front of a microphone in 15 years.
No, we're fine. We got about 5 minutes on this, and then we'll give it about 25 minutes on the backside.
I'm gonna run to the John.
Oh, yeah, I have trouble getting into John with this thing. I'm trying to pace myself. Yeah, we're hot. We're hot.
No, I'm fine.
We're gonna keep going with the questions. And we really want to talk about what this show is supposed to do. We haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
So I think what I may do is, he's talking a lot about putting projects together, which I like. It's a good angle. But I think we need to kind of backtrack a little bit. So I'm gonna ask a few questions about what you want this show to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. You did a good job, though. I think. Then we'll go back to making films again. So he's establishing his credibility. I get it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it. Very good.
Pre-game.
Good.
Yeah.
Good job.
He did, thousands of interviews, and so he worked out some radio personnel. He had a sports show that dealt with professional firefighters.
Yeah.
He interviewed people from all over the world. Very successful.
Yeah. Well, he obviously believes in you and he wants to be part of it.
Oh, he does.
Yeah. So John, it gives you another chapter in your life to be part of all this. Well, like our show is up to 13 million a week now. I put my own show. And so all the shows I'm sponsoring are growing. So we're going to give you 100 cities and 25 to 30 million potential listeners. And we'll let it grow. We'll just let it grow. You know, that's what I'm doing with everyone.
Well, see, that's what would be of interest to any film distributor or distributor similar AMC. They want to be able to get the message out about their upcoming shows.
Oh, well, we'll do that. We'll do that.
So I'm just saying, that's why this is a good format.
Yeah. Well, we're going to shift gears on the comeback. And we're going to talk about the purpose of the movie show.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I wonder if we should tell the girls and worry about it.
You want me to stick my head out there and ask them to hang on tight?
Tell them that we're about 25 minutes behind time.
Stay more out there.
You should be down, and there's an office down there at the end of the hall.
This way?
To the left.
Okay.
No, I think we're good. We're just doing our best shot. Yeah, it's going to be what it's going to be. Is this me or you?
That's you.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
So it's from Poplar Bluff.
How's Tommy doing?
She's doing good. She said the same thing.
Hi. You got the book I gave you?
Yes.
Okay.
Stand by.
You're like number
Charlie Scarlett.
6. Number 6. Off the assembly line.
636-400-6100.
You're a little far away.
No, I know.
And his voice is soft. Say when, Mark. All right, audience, welcome back. You're listening to Movies and More. That's going to come to you every week. It's a brand new show. And Stacy, what are the dates and times the movie's going to be for?
The first airing, I believe, is this Friday, and I believe that's scheduled for 5 o'clock.
That's a great time.
It's a great, well, try.
That would be January the 6th.
January the
Those of you keeping score
Yes.
at home, that's January the 6th.
And then it's going to be, next week, it'll be Monday to Friday. And what times are those?
I believe that's 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
3 Central Time in the afternoon.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, it's Fridays at 3 p.m.
Okay, Friday's at 3. Yeah.
Okay?
Right, okay.
All right. Okay, so guys, when we first got started, we were talking about what it takes to be be in the movies and what to do. But that's not what your show's about. I want to go back to that. I love what you're doing. But I think what we want to do is we want to talk a little bit about why you're doing a show to discuss movies. What do you want the listeners to get out of that? How is it different than what other people are doing today or not doing? You know, there's obviously a lack of information because of all the traumas and movies
Right.
shutting down and everything else. But what is this show about, and what inspired you to want to do this show? What do you want to do? What do you want to see happen from this show?
To answer it this way, I have some real good friends with Regal Entertainment that was bought were actually taken over by Cineworld, the British uh, media corporation.
Okay.
But my folks at Regal, immediately after the 2020 pandemic, which for all intents and purposes is behind us, they said very simply, you know, Stace, we've got one heck of a job in front of us, and that's to convince people to come back to the cinema, to come back to the theater.
That are pretty empty.
That have basically been, I mean, like, keep in mind, they were closed down for
Yeah.
18 months. For 18 months.
It was devastating.
I mean, in fact, it was almost terminal, is what it almost was. But at any rate, Hollywood tried to catch up with the demand for content that gap was being taken over by the streaming markets, by the serials. Uh, you know, I know when we were down for the year and I was home almost all the time, binge watching became the rule of the day.
Right.
You just binge watch everything. You know?
Yep.
So, in order for the cinemas to compete with the streaming market, which obviously took a market share away from them, and they knew that, they had to be able to come up with some type of method that they could get the word out. And they were talking about, you know, how do we talk to people directly to our market? Uh, how do we introduce up and coming new releases and so forth? So what was obvious to me was that there is a demand simply because the industry had that demand. So if we were going to try to facilitate that requirement by the industry, what could we do from a radio or simulcast, whatever perspective? What could we do to introduce the folks to new film releases, which is really our purpose and intent, and at the same time give them an insight, the listener an insight to what it takes to produce a movie, what it takes to
Sort of like a Siskel and Ebert, but at another level. It's
Yeah.
kind of
well,
a different.
we like to think
a
that
different
equal or
angle.
greater level. Yes,
Yeah.
that's what we
We
like.
will diagnose.
Because you have knowledge, you have
Sure.
experience, and you can talk at those movies and why people should do it and what those movies are about. Actually, there's juicy little tidbits when you talk about a movie. You know, you say, "Hey, I talked to this actor and this producer, and these are the things they brought out." I think the market doesn't really. I don't see it out there. Maybe it's out there with people discussing movies, but I don't see it that much.
There's always going to be films being made. The question is what kind of quality is Hollywood going to produce, and the indies. You know, I believe the last statistics I saw on the total number of feature films, English-speaking feature films that came out of so-called Hollywood and America in 2017 was a total of about 600 films. India and China both released more feature films, at least in 2017.
Bollywood
Bollywood is a big deal.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the Hollywood Far East, right? Or Asia Minor, I guess.
Sure.
I see a lot of Far East James Bond types movies and spy movies and suspense movies. They're on Netflix all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts? I mean, do they seem like they're at the level
I think
that you were hoping for?
they're good, but it's hard to read translations on the screen.
Right. And pay attention to
And
all the
pay
little
attention.
intricacies of the expressions and the body language.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, you can get involved in some, but it's not grassroots in my mind. You know, I mean, they're going back to their audience, and we just have to be override fodder for the cannon or whatever. That's my
Right.
gut feel. And I'm somebody I've been around a long time, but that's what I feel. You know?
Right. I personally feel like better films should be out there.
Okay.
And one of my quotes on my IMDb page is along the lines of if I really want to see a film that hasn't been made yet, I guess I got to make it myself, something like that. So I want to make the film that I want to see, and to Stacy and I, it's all intertwined. We're getting the ball rolling on doing some serious work, making numerous feature films and television shows in the St. Louis
Those
area.
are things you're doing.
These are
now.
things we're actively very close
Yeah,
to. We're in pre-production basically on a couple of them.
Well, and to John's point, you talk about what this show is going to be about. When you think of feature films, naturally you think of the Hollywood studio system, all that. But what has become more prevalent is the independent film producer. And there's now competition. I mean, right on dead competition with Hollywood in states like Georgia, Louisiana, New Mexico,
Rhode Island,
Rhode Island, even Illinois, our sisters.
they have some serious
Oh,
heavy-duty
I mean,
tax
they-
incentives.
These people are just, okay. So what amounts to is this, is films that maybe Hollywood wouldn't even give the time of day to producer to talk about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. All of a sudden, there's a marketplace and production facility that is listening to the new filmmaker, the new producer, the new director, and even new talent because of demand for content.
Right.
Now, streaming has defined that market and has just uplifted it. Now, so what's happening now, all of a sudden, we begin talking about the cinemas. They are competing for that content that's trying to be taken away from, from the streaming market or even network or cable. So everybody's kind of, they're like dogs fighting over the same, content bone, if you will. And so one of our things that we want to talk about is paying proper respect to the independent film producers, Sam. Those folks that are in that business are filling a much needed void in the marketplace. And we would like to introduce independents that are coming into business that maybe even have been around for a while, that are producing films that are very, very receptive in the marketplace.
So are you talking about the ones that you're going to help produce, or are you talking about the ones that are being produced that you want to educate the public when they want to go see them?
All of the above.
All
I
the
thought.
All the above.
Amen.
Okay.
Yeah,
We want to absolutely talk about our projects,
Okay.
but we want to talk about other great projects that are out there. It's just such a hard industry to break through. I could explain to you why it's almost impossible to get
There
a
are a
major.
million stories in the naked city of making movies. You're going to hear a few of them from here.
Well, I mean, what's, in your opinion, what's hot out there now that people should go see that are not getting the exposure?
Obviously, the big one is Avatar.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And,
Oh, the new Avatar. I saw some promo stuff.
well,
Right.
and all the, I mean, that's just an unbelievable production. And just to tell everybody, that show had an at or near budget of Top Gun Maverick. Now, that film was produced for supposedly in or around $500 million, give or take there maybe.
Something like that.
Something like that, okay? Avatar is the same way. And what I've heard is that Avatar will very soon surpass box office receipts above Top Gun Maverick. Now, when you think in terms of animated shows, of course, Disney, I mean, the whole world would be a path to Disney series or to watch Disney films.
Right.
And so what's occurring now is that there are other people that are jumping on the bandwagon that animation is very important. And I got to take a chance of just make a point right here. You talk about films that are of interest. Faith-based films, which maybe haven't gotten all the attention that should. Most recently, within like the last couple of years, there was a film that came out called Father Stew.
Right. Mark Wahlberg.
Bingo, that's the same one. And coincidentally enough, that was an independent film that was produced, funded by Mark Wahlberg for I think it was like $3 or $4 million that he actually funded himself. Well, the film went on to, I think it had a box office, between box office and all the various methods of distribution. It actually grossed about 25 million. So it was a simple independent film that was based on a true story of a priest that Mark knew growing up, that they turned into this beautiful, beautiful story. And I'm not going to give the plot away
But you will on the show.
Oh, it was
You
phenomenal.
won't get it all the way, but on the show you'll talk.
Oh, absolutely, sure.
Because I'm sure a lot of audiences are unaware.
Absolutely. And but I'm just saying that's another genre of the independent film for business, the faith-based, and there's a lot of producers and former actors like we were talking before about Louisiana.
Yep.
John Schneider,
Right.
Dukes of
The blonde-haired guy from the
Dukes
Dukes
of
of
Hazzard,
Hazzard,
right?
right.
Okay,
He still acts.
still acts, and now he has his own production studio facility in Louisiana, and they do a ton of faith-based films. So I just want to throw it out. Yeah.
I want to make an observation here too. A lot of people may think, the era of going to the shows on a Friday night at a brick and mortar theater are over. And here's why I don't believe that's true. The pandemic shut down, everybody lived through it 3 years ago. Shut down the baseball games and the hockey games and the basketball games and the restaurants and the bars and every other place that you go to have a little fun, and including the movie theaters. And guess what? People are back in the baseball games and the football games and the hockey games
Bars.
and the bars. Not me.
Not you.
Not
all right.
you. But they're
Keep
going
going.
back up.
Right.
If the quality is there, to me, that's the era I grew up in. We waited all week to go to the movies in the 70s to see the latest film that came out. The first time I can remember, I wanted to go really badly, but I was afraid to go, and it was Jaws, and I almost had to walk out. I was just a kid. I almost had to walk out because it was so scary. But there's an excitement there, Stan, that you don't get sitting in front of your own television set.
The big screen effect.
The biggest example I can give you is when Dumb and Dumber came out. To me, that's the funniest movie that was ever written, ever made, ever acted in. Okay, that's my personal opinion.
Okay.
I was in Kentucky in 1994, and I had a new girlfriend. I was a TV news reporter, and I walked into Blockbuster Video, and I saw a poster for Dumb and Dumber, and Jeff Daniels and Jim Carrey, they had these two stupid looks on their faces, and their hair was messed up, and they had these wild eyes, and the tagline was for Harry and Lloyd, every day is a no-brainer. And I said, I am going to go see that movie. We went on opening night. It was a Friday night, and I laughed the whole way through the movie, and half of the people in there laughed the whole way through the movie. You're not going to get that same experience at home sitting on your couch.
No.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's
And that popcorn smell. And let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Remember that?
I do.
Well, I went to the lobby a lot.
I
didn't
wish
have
I
a lot
would've
of
wrote
money when I was
that.
a kid, but I went to the lobby and I watched other kids buying popcorn and soda and wished that I had. But anyway, I made mine now.
No. I think we're bringing up a point that the audiences, they need a point of reference, and you're giving it to them.
Yeah, absolutely same.
And I mean, I did with it. To me, I would love to have somebody tell me. With Stacy, I talked about this radio show. I said, well, I think we need it, and I said, why don't we take a run at it? And that's what's happening now. It's taking on its own legs now.
It's,
You two are doing yours.
look, it's part of our culture, Stan.
Yeah.
It's part of who we are.
We,
A lot of cultures
America
are judged by
invented
the
the film business. It started with us.
right.
Charlie Chaplin, right? Douglas Fairbanks Sr.,
Buster Keaton,
Buster Keaton, and all those wonderful silent
the
actors.
golden age of Hollywood was
And-
1913 to
and-
1969.
There you go. But we start that business. And what was so sad, I got to tell this real quick. What
Yeah.
happened was Canada started stealing our production business. About 30 or 40% of our business was going north. Well, nobody could figure it out. Well, how about tax credits? How about our Section 181 film and television production tax credits? We didn't have anything until Canada came along and started selling our action. Well, now that credit combined with state tax credits, now all of a sudden we're slowly but surely getting our market share back.
Yeah, you've seen tax credits in Atlanta, a lot of it in Atlanta.
Precisely.
And I think it's good that they're incentivizing people
They
to
are.
come out to, you don't have to shoot it in Hollywood, you come out to the Midwest and shoot it. You know,
Well, to take your example, Atlanta, Tyler Perry, everybody knows who Tyler Perry
yeah,
is.
of course.
Medea's this and that, and there's I don't even know how many films there are, but he's basically running the show down there, and it's sort of a mini Hollywood.
Well, it's at Hollywood East. They
Yeah,
refer to Atlanta as Hollywood East.
It is booming.
As a statistic, which I couldn't believe until I verified it, I'm like Ronald Reagan, trust but verify.
Right.
Yeah, I think that
Atlanta has more square footage of studios than does Hollywood.
Really?
guys.
Hard to believe. True story. Absolutely.
But we got about 20 minutes to go in the show. Let's go back to where we were before. And let's talk about your expertise in putting films together. I want to flip it back for a moment. So either one can answer this. So what is the most difficult aspect of putting your own projects together? Because you're also platforming that on the show too, I guess.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're going to help people out that are doing that?
Look at any famous producer or famous actor. Name anybody, and I bet you they got one film they're making right now, and 2 or 3 others that are right there in the pipeline, ready to be made. Okay. The hardest thing to do is get the ball rolling on a project. Obviously, there's different stages to me. There's the battle of the script. You have an idea, you got to learn how to put it on paper. The great filmmaker Stanley Kubrick, who I believe was the greatest filmmaker of all time, said, "If you can put it on a page, you can make a movie out
Did he
of
do
it."
Clockwork Orange?
He did.
Okay, man, that just flipped out of my head from nowhere.
That is one of my favorite films of all time. I could talk to you for 3 hours just about A Clockwork Orange. The most interesting thing about Stanley Kubrick was, to me, he loved to read books, okay? And he got all of his major films from books that he read. He didn't write the books. He'd read 3 or 4 books a year.
Adaptation.
And he would turn it into a screenplay.
Hmm.
And Clockwork Orange is a perfect example. Anthony Burgess wrote that.
Yeah, that just jumped out.
And it was
I remember that.
It was a classic novel in England, okay? And the thing that nobody knows is, what does A Clockwork Orange mean, okay? And Anthony Burgess says it really doesn't mean much. He said, I was sitting in a pub one day, and 2 guys were drinking. They both had a lot to drink, and one guy called the other guy A Clockwork Orange. He said, the guy said, I got to go home. I got to go home now. Just out of the blue, he stands up, says, I got to go home. And he says, what are you, A Clockwork Orange? And Anthony Burgess said, I always wanted to go back and ask that guy, what did you mean by that?
Okay, well, let me shift gears. So we talked about St. Louis getting back in the film industry. I don't want to be fake this. Does St. Louis really have the potential or possibility of becoming a filmmaking giant, not just in America, but around the world?
I would say yes for a couple of reasons. First, logistically, it's dead in the center of the United States. And from a film producer's perspective, you want good hotels where you can put your people in. The Hotel and Visitors Commission of St. Louis will be the first to tell you that they've got, I think, like 70,000 rooms now. So housing your production people is not a problem. You want cooperation with local law enforcement. And I'll give you a comparison to that, like in Los Angeles. For a long, long time, if you shot a movie and let's say you had a scene in Burbank, a chase scene, and you went to Burbank, Toluca Lake, Studio City, Universal City. Every time you went through one of those cities, you had to get a permit.
Mm-hmm.
You had to
Sounds crazy, but you did. Same thing in New York.
For racing?
No, to shoot.
Just to shoot.
Just to
and
shoot.
A chase scene, so like a bank robber, where the cops are chasing a bank robber, and they're going down all these streets. Well, every time you went to a municipality, you had to pay somebody and say, well, in St. Louis is like that. You have St. Louis City, which is a lot of neighborhoods. Then you have St. Louis County, But I can tell you from having been kind of loosely involved with Up in the Air in 2009, with George Clooney.
I've seen it about 5 times.
They shot a bunch of it
I
downtown.
saw that.
And so what I can tell you was that the cooperation that was extended, that production company, Jason Reitman was like one of the producers and the director of that movie. He went back to California and said, St. Louis has got to be the best kept secret in the world. He said, we were going to the airport and back and forth to the hotel and to Schneinhardt and to this and that. And he said, nobody had their hand out. Nobody was hitting us up for money, as opposed to like California.
Where they will shut you down.
Where they
will
will
shut you down,
and then
literally.
I mean, they'll stop a chasing because you don't have a damn permit, So all I'm saying is that when you talk about will St. Louis work, sure it'll work. And the main thing is that I think local and state government, well, particularly state government, in time will recognize that we have to reinitiate those production tax credits, which were taken away right after Up in the Air. And I think that St. Louis can become, maybe not overnight. It's going to take time, but in time they can be ranked right up there with Georgia and Louisiana. I think that will happen.
Yeah. I look to two places when I'm casting a film, a short film or a music video or a feature film. New York is the first place I look at. I just love New Yorkers. I love their attitudes. Okay, you can find 100 guys that look just like John F. Kennedy. If you want to make a movie about John F. Kennedy, just put out a casting call, and you'll get headshots. Believe me. And then LA is the other one. And most of my actors that I've done projects in St. Louis with are from New York or LA.
Really?
And it's very rare. It's very rare to find an actor who's exactly what you need in St. Louis, because to me, it's really a wannabe film city. It's you may or may not find what you need with production people, with actors, with producers. It's hit and miss. And that's why I connected so well with Stacy when I met him last year.
We talk the same language.
We just realized we both have these giant aspirations for St. Louis, not just to make films, but do them in St. Louis and do them our way.
Tell me about, can we get the golden age of Hollywood? Can we get it back?
Just a second, I gotta say this. When we talk about the golden age of Hollywood, I think it's more of the visualization of what that means. If we think in terms of the grandiose stars like Marilyn Monroe,
Humphrey Bogart,
Humphrey
Benny
Bogart,
Davis,
and
Clark
Benny
Gable.
He stole my thunder. But no, you're absolutely right. Exactly. But when you think, it's more about personality. What happens is now you have certain actors that have established stardom, like Tom Cruise. I mean,
Right.
he's like the modern day Clark
He'll work
Gable.
us till the day he dies because he's bankable.
I mean, he's definitely bankable, and
So is George Clooney.
well, that was the other one. And so you do have a few actors that would fall into that same kind of category that could be deemed a return to the golden age, if nothing else, a persona of the actor that we have the visualization. And really from a director and producer standpoint, Clint Eastwood, even though he's 90 years old, look how many films he's done since the days of the spaghetti westerns.
Yeah, he's not.
I mean,
65 years ago. He's been acting for 65 years.
now
92.
now that's just a pretty good career, So, can we return to that? To an extent, we never left it.
Can we return to the movie theater chains?
Well, that's what we're talking about. I think we can. I think a lot of it's going to depend upon the quality of film for general audiences. The movie-going experience is unlike anything else that you can do. I mean, when young people say, let's go on a date, well, you want to go to a movie? That's the first thing they say. Okay, you want to go to a restaurant? You want to eat first or afterwards? Well, okay, we'll eat afterwards. Or whatever. But that's the whole experience. And let's talk about drive-ins just a second. Now, drive-ins have been gone for a while.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but God only knows how many children were conceived at drive-in.
No,
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is, drive-ins had their purpose. They had their purpose.
There's, yeah.
Their purpose.
I'm staying away
Okay.
from.
Well, this is a G-Red show, so we're gonna keep it clean.
I went to drive-ins. I got it.
Okay, we all got
What
it.
do you, okay, I won't go there either.
I took our sailing from the deli and then we just had fun. But no, so we're kind of heading into the home stretch, guys. You know, we all had the COVID pandemic. Everybody was shell shocked. Everybody's trying to make a comeback. You know, is Hollywood doing anything, in your opinion, to fix the movie industry to get it right sized?
I think just one element of that is they're getting really bogged down in politics. And I think it's kind of overdoing it, and they're really turning off their audiences. That's my personal opinion. I believe in stories, and I'm speaking of just the stuff that I write, stories that teach you something about the world or teach you something about yourself or promote understanding between white people and black people or whoever. I always try to say something with a story.
But
You know,
John, you're going to be on the air. You guys are hosting this new show. What do you want audiences to know when they listen to the show? What's the takeaway? We only got a couple minutes to
there's
go.
hope for the movie industry. Don't give up on it.
Don't give up
Don't
on it.
give up on it.
To your point, Stan, back in the golden age that you were talking about,
Right.
Louis B. Mayer was famous for saying, so if you want to send a message, call Western Union.
Yeah.
Okay, so the thing with this is that politics has an element maybe in some protection dominant. We shouldn't go after the politically right or politically wrong or this group or that group. People want to be entertained. Well, to be informed a little bit, yeah, that's okay. But the first thing is it's entertainment. That's what Hollywood has always sold. And I think to get back to what you're talking about, I think they have to kind of conform to that simple formula.
Yeah.
Entertain, be funny. You know, I mean that's what's going to bring the industry back.
I like to see it as a safe place. You're a father. You've got a 16-year-old daughter. She's going out on her first date. Okay. And what would you feel better about? Knowing that this kid that you've never met is taking her to the movie theater, or he's taking her to Uncle Louie's house to sit on the couch and watch Netflix, you know?
Yeah.
You answer that question for yourself.
Well, you know, guys, we're at the end. We're at the end of the journey.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you. I look forward to you hosting your new Movies and More
As
show.
do we.
Thanks for having us.
We're delighted. This is the start. You guys will be here every week, and we also working on another studio. So we have a lot of beautiful
I'd like to
places.
make a suggestion for this building. If somebody out there would like to bring a deli to this building,
How about a deli cart?
or a deli cart, or a tamale cart, food, something, okay?
All right. Well, you know what, Mark? I think we're going to wrap it up. Okay, guys. Thank you again for being
Thanks,
on the
Stan.
show.
Good to be
Look
here.
forward to see you next week. You're welcome. Okay.
That's all right. I want to hear the vocal over here.
I got to get this other couple.
Okay.
Sorry. Will you tell them to come in?
I'm sorry.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. I told them.
We'll all have lunch together.
Sure.
Okay.
Mark,
Good job.
thank you. Mark, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank
guys.
you, Mark.
You're welcome.
So we see you next Tuesday.
I won't be there, but I'll be calling in remotely. But yeah, here.
Should I tell them to come in right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
11:30 Tuesday. Take the show, don't you?
Well, I mean, we got 10 to noon, you have noon to 1. I'm sorry, we just ran behind a little bit
Okay,
there.
no. Okay, so we're at 12, and I'm always early, so.
Okay, I may not be here for your show.
No, I know, I just want to know what time to be here.
Yeah, I want to talk to you more about the time clock and questions too.
Sure, okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks,
Thank
buddy.
you, Stan.
Thank
God
you.
bless you, brother.
God
I
bless.
hope you continue to feel better.
Thank you.
Y'all take care.
All
Bye,
right.
Mark.
Enjoy
See you
the book.
later.
Enjoy the book.
Yep, we will. You go right ahead. I wait for everybody.
Thanks, Mark. Sorry I backed these up too tight.
Yes, you did.
It's wearing me down.
You did it.
I know.
I had nothing to do with
I
it.
know. I was trying to get them all done at one time.
How you doing?